All right, you tell me, is this ego lifting?
All right. You're gonna get 4 to 8 reps in strict control. Looks good. Nice. Yeah, that works.
Nice.
That's it.
I would say that's failure. I like this movement for hitting both the lats and the upper back, because if you're pulling and your arm path is in narrow, whether it's a vertical pull or a horizontal pull, if your arm path is in narrow, you're going to be training the lats. And as long as you're getting that shoulder blade range of motion and you're loading that scapular retraction, you're going to be training the upper back too. So this is kind of killing two birds with one stone.
For me, in my back workouts, I typically only have two main focuses. One is a pulling movement and one is pulling down like that. Aside from that, I might do like serratus or lat dumbbell pullovers or whatever you want to call them.
Yep.
But not much else.
All right, cool.
My favorite would be like a T-bar row, because my lower back, I don't usually do many of these because my lower back's not the best. But yeah, like any kind of chest supported rows, any kind of chins of any kind.
Well, I definitely like a chest supported row more. It's more optimal, more science-based.
Really?
Because you don't have your lower back limiting you.
Okay.
Right, so there's a ton of stability through the torso, through the trunk, and you can focus all of your effort on just pulling, right?
What about like bent rows? I used to do them as a kid. I was like, I'm reading magazines, like do bent rows, bent rows. Now I don't do them anymore. It's because of my lower back.
Exactly.
So you say, it's probably smart, bent rows, maybe those are one of the most overrated exercises.
Yeah, so I think bent over barbell row is definitely up there for like top 5 overrated exercises.
I'd have to agree.
Because it's extremely common. Like lots of people know what that is, so it's obviously popular.
Well, we've all seen Dorian Yates pulling like 4 plates aside and showing off guys doing 5 plates. They're like, are you doing deadlifts or rows here?
Exactly, and that's the thing, right? Why would I want to tax other muscles that aren't the target muscle, or limit the movement by other muscles than the target muscle? You don't want to do that. It's going to limit output and growth stimulus for the upper back, which is what we're trying to train with a row. So instead, a chest supported variation would be much better. Yeah, the only reason, honestly, that I'm doing this one today is because I have a bit of an injury in my elbow, and so this doesn't bother it, but the T-bar does. But usually I do the T-bar row. That's good for me.
All right, I'll do one more set. Now, during this exercise, do you ever pull with your hands like this, or you ever supinate or pronate? You feel there's a big difference in your back depending on your hand width or grip?
Yeah, so like I said, because I want to get lats and upper back with this, I want to keep my hands a little more narrow. And so sometimes it can be helpful to supinate.
Okay.
Because that's going to, as you supinate, you see my shoulder, I externally rotate the shoulder.
Yep.
And so as you supinate, it's going to keep your arms in tighter.
Okay.
If I wanted to do this for all upper back and not get any lat out of it, I would pronate a little bit.
Yeah.
And let my arms kind of move a little wider.
Okay, so for upper back, more of the pronated grip, so hands on top, pull up, and more for the lower lat, pull in with your hands this way, even supinate, like hold a cup of soup and pull into your lower body.
Yeah.
What about if we start like this and pull and rotate as we're doing it? What could that add?
As you internally rotate, the lats are going to lose leverage.
Yeah.
And that's not necessarily giving you more upper back. It's just giving you less lat. So that's why I say if you keep a narrow arm path and you keep your hands neutral or supinate all the way through, keep your elbows tight, you're going to get lat all the way through. There's going to be tension on the lat the entire range of motion.
Yeah.
And then as you bring your scaps back, you're going to get upper back as well. So doing this isn't doing anything except just losing tension off the lat in the end of the range of motion.
All right.
Because the lat's not an external rotator, at least not a super strong one. So it's better in terms of getting more bang for your buck to keep your arms a little tighter.
All right, I'm going to do this set with more of a supinated grip.
Yeah, keep those elbows in tight. Drive into your hip. Really pull those shoulder blades back together. Nice. Great job. And if there's one thing that Coach Greg does not lack, it's intensity. Some people might consider this redundant because we already did a sagittal plane lat movement, but this is going to be a little bit more lat bias, target a little bit more of the lat fibers because we're going a little bit more overhead.
Yeah.
And so we're going to get a little bit more lower lat with this. I would say this is an overall mid-lat movement, but it's going to get a little bit of all the lats, upper and lower. And so basically...
Now, first question is, it's important to do one arm at a time versus both at the same time?
It's a good question. So right now the research is showing that if you do one arm at a time or less muscles at a time, you get better recruitment in the muscle. Because your nervous system, your motor command doesn't have to allocate as much motor command to all different places. It can just go to one place, right?
That's
so
interesting. I never thought of that, but it makes a lot of sense.
Think about when you're doing like a curl, for example.
Yeah.
And then you can't do curls with both arms, but you can get a couple more if you do one at a time.
Yeah, I do that all the time.
Exactly, and that's because you're able to get a little bit more motor recruitment to continue moving that same amount of weight if you do one arm at a time.
I never thought of that. It's like your brain is thinking of two arms at the same time. If you do one arm at a time, it can focus more on that one arm. It makes sense.
Yep. And so the other thing to do though, when you're doing one arm at a time or one side at a time, is to make sure you rest between sides.
Yeah.
Because you are going to have a little bit of fatigue.
Even mental fatigue from going that hard.
Exactly, and because it's also going to both sides, or because it's going to be working the same muscle but on the other side.
Yeah.
So it's using a little bit of the same amount of direction.
Yeah.
And so you want to just make sure you're resting, same amount of rest time you normally would between sets before you do the other side.
Yeah. So pros and cons. There's a lot of benefits, some cons. So
twice
you
as
gotta
many
pick what
sets,
you want.
right? So you can't do every set unilateral.
Yeah, exactly. It would be there twice as long.
So with this movement, just take the opposite hand and make sure you're bracing.
Okay.
And just keep your arm relatively
I see the lean in a little bit to get that stretch at the start.
And then, you just want to make sure you're letting your shoulder, your whole shoulder come up and forward at the top.
Yeah.
And then drive your elbow to your hip.
Yeah.
And bring your shoulder down and back at the same time. And that's all there is to it.
Okay.
And I would try to keep a little bit of a supinated grip. It doesn't have to be completely supinated, but just like neutral or slight supination there.
Same reasons we discussed there.
Just so that the lat doesn't lose leverage. That's right.
Okay. All right, I'm gonna give this a try. I've never done this before, so we'll see.
I was gonna say I don't think you probably have. So.
No. So is my hand more down here or is it up here?
I think it's probably better to have it more in line with where the resistance is coming from.
Okay.
So you can oppose it. Okay. You don't need to be this vertical, so you can lean back a little bit.
Like back here?
Yeah, that's fine. Okay. Just make sure you keep this arm straight so that you're not using
Does it matter from...
No, that's fine too. You just want to make sure you're not loading your tricep.
Okay.
And you probably don't even need to go that high. Because like I said before, if you go too high...
Not as much benefit in the stretch you're saying.
Exactly. Because the pec and the triceps are going to do that first couple inches of range of motion at the top.
Oh, you can look in the mirrors they're doing it.
There you go.
Check out the hamstrings.
Not too bad for an old dog, eh, Greg?
That's it. 48 still going.
There you go.
I was watching a Togi video today making a response. He said I'm an old, wrinkled up old man and he wouldn't know what to do with himself if he ever ended up looking like me.
Man, I hope I look like you at your age.
I'm like, Togi, if he makes it to 70, he's not gonna look the way I do. We're all gonna look a lot worse than this at some point if we make it that far.
But that's the point, right, is making it that far. Nice, good effort.
One more.
Nice. There you go.
I don't know how you lifted that stack. Oh, man. That's it. Oh. No, I got a good pump from that. A lot. Like, I really feel it. Yeah. Deep inside here, like a lot right in. Yeah. More than if I were doing, say, chins, for example.
No, I think like since the science-based lifting movement has kind of become so big, this kind of lat movement has become overrated, like overpopularized.
Yeah.
I think it's a really good lat movement and it feels really good, but it's not like the best lat movement.
Yeah.
It's just one of the good ones you should do.
Yeah.
What do you think about how science-based lifting has done to the fitness community?
Overall, I think science-based lifting is a net positive for everyone. I think that there's obviously things we can learn. Now, some people criticize it because they think that just because you're training science-based that you're training easy. But you can train hard. I've watched you train. You're training to failure with good form and using science all at the same time. And so why don't we take all the good from everything?
Yeah.
The science, I'm going to grab all the science I can, all the harder than last time I can, and roll it up into one.
I am in 100% agreement with you. I think science is probably the best. If we had to pick an approach, science is the most objective approach. But there's lots of things that anecdote and experience tell us as well. I think it's just that a lot of people have misinterpreted or misapplied science and have made it, that's not the best way to train this muscle because X, Y, Z. And it's like a 20-year-old kid who has no muscle telling some guy who's massive. And it's like, just, you can have your own approach to it, and you can understand science is valuable, but it doesn't mean that something somebody else is doing is completely wrong or makes them dumb. But then vice versa, training with science-based principles doesn't mean that you're soft or that you're not training hard.
There's things that I know now that I didn't know 20 years ago because the science wasn't there. And so why not apply that? If there was no such thing as science-based lifting, we'd be all training the same way from the 1970s, doing 3 times a day workouts, doing 20 sets per body part every single day.
Yeah, no, it's, I agree. It's like medicine. I'm glad science has advanced medicine to make it more effective, or else we'd still be doing some crazy shit that they were doing in the early 1900s. Nice.
Now, what are your feelings of, say, doing a drop set? Like, say, doing the stack for 5 reps and then dropping it maybe 30 pounds, doing like 100 and doing like an extra 3-4 reps. Like, what do you think of that versus just like 1 set to failure?
So that's a pretty nuanced question. The reason that we hit failure on the set is because we're not able to continue to recruit the same amount of motor units. So what you're doing by doing a drop set is by, like, let's say you're training 100% of the muscle with your top weight.
Yeah.
But then once you hit failure and you do a drop set, then you're only training 70% of the muscle, right? And so, but that's still creating a ton of fatigue.
You're hitting failure again.
Especially because it's kind of after failure.
Yeah.
And so what that's doing is creating a ton of fatigue to train less of the muscle. So it's better to just do straight sets with adequate rest in between for to failure or close to failure. And that I would advocate that above, like.
So rather than doing like a drop set to failure and beyond, double drop set, just doing the craziest set ever, why not just do another set to failure?
Exactly, because think about it, you're doing, let's say I do 2 sets of 8 reps with 100 pounds. Or I could do 1 set with 8 reps with 100 pounds and then drop it to 50 pounds and do 6 reps and drop it to 30 pounds and do 6 reps. And then I go to do sets with 80 pounds or 100 pounds again, and I can't get as many reps as I otherwise could have because I have so much fatigue from lifting lighter weight.
So it sounds like if you have the time permits, and you don't need to rush a workout, that you're better off just doing more volume, more sets, rather than thinking I have to get the craziest intense set because I got to leave the gym right now.
Yeah, so it's not about more volume. It's just about making sure you have adequate rest between the amount of sets you're going to do. So those are kind of 2 different dimensions.
Yeah, say if you've only got a 45-minute workout versus an hour and a half, I can't do as much like I can't do one arm and then the other.
Time.
I wouldn't have the time to do that much volume. But if I only have 45 minutes and I have enough time to do one hard, drop set, it'd be better than, say, just doing 1 set to failure.
Correct. So in the case, if you have less time, it is better to do, I probably wouldn't do drop set, I would do like mile reps. Okay. So like hit failure, take a 10 to 20, 30 second break, same weight again, get as many reps as you can.
Okay.
Yeah. Elbow. Nice.
I feel like I got that imaginary lats, like you just feel like, yeah. The funny thing with training to failure is It's hard for most people to know where failure is. Like,
It's a great point.
they're doing leg presses and you're like, yeah, that was hard. I couldn't have done another rep, but then the gun is at your head and you could have done 5 more. And it's like, how hard did I train? Plus, on something like lat pull downs, I find I get to failure super early. Then I can only go halfway down, so I can't do a good rep under control, so I've hit failure. But if I swing a little bit, I can get 5 more, and I feel like I need to swing or I'm not getting any growth. But for a beginner, you just keep perfect form and go to failure, you're great. But as you get more and more advanced, you gotta kind of like cheat a little bit to get yourself to failure. Like,
I do think it's really important to train to failure at least regularly to know where it is. And the other thing is too, most people, if we're being honest, never train anywhere close to failure.
Absolutely.
And so if I'm gonna try to keep it super simple, I would just tell people train to failure.
Yeah.
Because inevitably you're gonna train not to failure some days if you're feeling tired and stuff. So unless you're a real hardo or you've been doing it a long time, you're very familiar with where failure is, it's probably best to just keep it simple, just train to failure.
Yeah, and many exercises like bicep curls. Like, am I okay? One more, and then I go halfway up. That was failure. And it's like, but you didn't actually push yourself all out. You gave up early.
Yeah.
Or like when I'm on a sprint on a bike race, and there's 20 of us at the line, and you're winning by 0.01 of a second. Did you actually sprint to failure? Like sometimes I'm just like mentally, I can't give it my all. I might have gave 98%, but it's not quite all out. And I think most people in the gym, 95% are never pushing themselves to their limits.
Yeah, I agree, 100%. And that's why technically if we're being optimal, you want to leave a rep in reserve, at least on your first set. But like I said, to be safe, keep it simple, train to failure.
Yeah, just train harder than last time.
Yeah, there you go. It's funny because that's your trademark saying. You've been saying it forever, but it's like 100%.
But it actually works. Whatever you did last day, just try a little bit more than that day and you're good.
Yep.